right, welcome back. Welcome back. This is the first time in 2024. I think all three of us have been on, so we're back another Saturday for the Watchdogs. I think y'all might be muted. Carlton, what's going on? Carlton, you got the keys to the car. We following you.
I don't know why. you got the blind leading the blind.
So what's happening? Everybody good?
Can't complain. Don't do no good.
Okay. I can't find my glasses, so I got these ugly glasses on this morning. So, this afternoon. I don't know why I call it morning. What's our subjects today? We go get into some in-depth discussion on some important matters going on across our nation.
Well, I think it was.
We kind of briefly hit on one of them because we kind of chit chatted about it earlier this week. One of them was basically the subject of the day is hidden gems, and that's just an analogy to say about a lot of the unearthing of a lot of mass graves of Black individuals from slave time to current time. Because I'm pretty sure y'all done heard about a news article about Jackson, Mississippi, where they found 215 unmarked graves behind a local jail there, and a mother literally had to buy her son back in order to bury him from the state.
Yeah, that's a sad situation. We talked about it briefly on the Rabble on Wednesday, but I still don't understand. Jackson, Mississippi has been in the news a whole lot lately because they are one of those cities in Mississippi where it's black rain. Jackson, Mississippi is black rain. It's about 80 and 90% black. And but it's the capital, I think, also of Mississippi.
I think it's correct,
if I'm not mistaken. And the whites in that city are and they live in the suburbs outside of the city, and they don't want nobody in the Jackson to arrest white people. Did y'all see that? Yeah, the courts, they have set up 2 different court systems now.
Wow.
Only in Jackson, and then outside of Jackson, white people can't go to court in Jackson.
So you telling me in the year of our Lord 2024 in Mississippi, they have in the city of Jackson 2 separate court systems?
Google it.
Who allowed this? Is my question.
It was nothing they could do because the state legislators granted it. They redrew the districts around Jackson and wouldn't let Jackson have jurisdiction over arresting white people.
I knew there's a reason why I didn't like Mississippi.
Yeah.
It amazes me that in the year 2024, we still have to deal, we as brown and people of color still have to deal with stuff like that. You telling me in the capital city of a state, you will not allow them to do what they need to do you literally separate it because it is like 90% black. It's like 90% black. Yeah. You telling me that the 10% still got their own city that you can't arrest them once they come to the city? At this point in time, I feel like we should have burned the suburbs. At this point, I still say we don't follow MLK. MLK is absolutely wrong. We need to follow Malcolm X, and they should have burned out the suburbs to the ground and started over. So y'all welcome to come to Jackson.
It's interesting. I don't know. We travel, and I used to live in Virginia, and it's interesting how in certain states, when you get to the rural parts and to this point, some of the cities, how overly or wrongly conditioned Black folks are. I'll never forget being in Virginia, and I would go to some of the rural parts to hang out, and just seeing how some of our people are just afraid or don't know how to do or apprehensive about challenging things. And I was looking like that ain't what I'm used to. But then again, I have a different lens and a different set of credentials and privilege that I carry. But it amazes me sometimes how you go to a Mississippi or a Virginia or a southern state to see how badly our people are positioned based on conditioning.
Yeah.
I mean, but based off what we just discussed earlier, Savannah says as I was referred to me years ago as a black town. If we have a black mayor, we have a black police chief, we have a whole all black city council, but nothing ever gets done. So can we not compare? So can we not compare Jackson to Savannah in some form or fashion?
Well, I will say this. I will say this. In comparison to structure and governance, maybe. But the thing is, the good thing about citizens in the city of Savannah, whether you like it or not, or whatever side our people stand on, you do have black folk that are engaged and that are not afraid to voice their opinion. Maybe in a Jackson, I don't see that happening for the masses, right? And that's because Mississippi has a backwards governor, right? So from the top down, Mississippi is backwards from the get. Now, you may not agree with Governor Kemp and you may not like him, but I will give him credit in saying that he's not that bad off, right? So we've got a slightly different situation, I think. So I think I see your comparison. We do have an Uncle Tom Mayor here, but other than that, I think we have some folks who are willing to get engaged and voice their opinions. What? I'm just saying.
I had to catch myself because I was about to say something. You know what I was about to say. Just
what's that? This is the rap. No, it's not the rap. This is the watchdog. You just have to say it politely.
There wasn't no way to say that politely. But speaking of him, the other part of it was the unearthing the mass graves, because if most people aren't aware, beneath the street of Broughton, where they just put all them nice pretty bricks, there is a whole slave graveyard beneath that street.
Yeah. And that's what they used to do back then, Carton. They used to bury us when they kill us. It wasn't no law to, if it was a white person that killed us, they knew that there wasn't no retribution for it. There was no penalties. There was no nothing for it. They'll just go bury you somewhere. Just like they used to bring you, drag you out the house and hang you. Who put those people on trial? Nobody.
Yeah.
So the history in this country is filled with incidents where they have killed hundreds of thousands of us, and there was no justice. And so it don't surprise us that there are mass graves and unnamed graves and unmarked graves everywhere across the South, especially.
No, but what I was going to say was when they were redoing it, I could never find that lady's name. I forgot her name, but I could never get the information, like where the information actually came from. But she's from Savannah. She's a Gullah Geechee She's of Gullah Geechee descent. And when they were doing the construction, which is the new construction that everybody sees, like I said, those nice new pretty bricks they've done like the past recent year, she was talking to one of the workers, and the workers they discovered it, but there was really nothing that they could do because they already knew that if they said something, they would be penalized for the fact that they said something about there being bodies beneath the street. So rather than them saying something about it, she asked him, and he was like, yeah, he nodded, but he would never come openly out and say, hey, we found bodies up under here, because automatically we know when that type of historical significance happens, they're going to shut down that whole construction project until they unearth everything that's beneath that street. So rather than them having to take the time to spend and pause, people being able to shop on Broughton and the future parade, because it probably would have hindered the St. Patrick's Day parade, which is what they didn't want. They put more dirt, they just threw more dirt on top of it, slapped some cement on top of it, and them bricks, and went on about their day.
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
in all actuality, it's a tragic. It's tragic because more than likely the amount of history and stuff that could have been discovered up under there is lost now because nobody's going to tear Broad Street now to just go up under there to find what could possibly be there.
Yeah.
And
Well,
what bothers me most about it is that when it was brought to the attention of authorities and leadership here in the city, nobody cared because they figured Broughton Street was bigger than those bodies that was being dug up. They figured that what they were doing on Broughton Street was more important than preserving those bones and skeleton remains uh, of people that were in mass graves on Broughton Street. You know, and it's a shame that you have black leadership in Chatham County, Savannah area, and nobody did anything. Now, had that been um, even in Mississippi, if you were to say that those were some Jewish people that were in those graves and behind that jail, or some Asian people that were behind, you know, they'd be passing legislation and new laws, and the FBI would be in, and everybody would be done swooped down, and it'd be all kind of investigations, you know. But we are still treated like we don't matter, and that's the problem. Without shows like what we have here, without shows like what we have here to bring the attention to these things, because and people, you have to realize social media is the news, and what we're doing here, we not just on social media. We got our own Roku channel. We got our own website where you can go and watch things that we do, and we talk about everything that affects our community. And these shows are important because we bring information to our community, and it just has to be said. And I had to say that.
no,
But the question is, how do we get our community involved? I always ask this question because we, African Americans, are Black people in general. We are one of the few groups of people that in this country that don't stick together. We turn on our own people for everybody else. How do we get everybody involved to say, hey, we got to do something about this and not allow this to happen? Because we know what happens when we actually do stand together. Stuff gets done. Because let's never forget when the Voting Act Right of 1965, when it was passed, right after MLK, it got passed 6 days after MLK assassinated.
But you know what,
reason
you said a key thing right there. And it happens today. You see a white officer, you have a George Floyd situation, and we want to be up in arms. We mad now. But 5 days later, we do nothing about it. We have no demands. We have no outcomes that we're seeking. We have no results that we want. We just get mad and cut the fool and burn up our cities and act like we don't have no kind of sense. But the problem becomes you don't have any real organization. So people say, well, where are the Malcolm X's and where are the MLKs and where are the Benny Mitchells and where are the Leonard Smalls? It's in all of us. The problem becomes, and we see this a lot in this city, I am mad at you or I'm jealous of you because you got a blessing before I did. And because you got that blessing, you now think you're better than me. And so now I got to tear you down, hurt you through words, put your business out there that I don't even know, and create rumors just to make sure that I demonstrate my jealousy instead of working with you, right? Celebrate you so that when my blessing comes, you can celebrate me. We've got to understand one thing. Everybody ain't going to grow at the same time, but everybody can grow if we work together. There's a meme out there, and it has in one picture a big shark going after one fish. But then on the second picture, it has about, let's say, 30 fish going after one shark. If we work collectively through the principles of Kwanzaa that we have learned, or some of us have learned, how powerful could we be? Let's say, and Julius talks about this all the time, if we get 10 people who are serious and ethical, and we pool our money, do you know how much property and wealth we could build? I want people to go back. I saw this on YouTube a couple of weeks ago where in Jacksonville, it's on my on my Facebook page. In Jacksonville, there used to be a community, a black community. They built life insurance through community collectivism. They had black communities. They had their own community back in the 50s and 60s. But you know what destroyed it? I-95. They put I-95 through it, and it wasn't us that did it. But see, when we don't work together, we allow folk that don't look like us to come into our communities and take it apart. So at what point are we going to realize that kill your jealousy, kill your feelings, and kill your jealousy, your feelings, and your idiotic ways of being, and work together?
You know, I just said this at the beginning of the show. Like I tell everybody, I don't follow Dr. King's principle. I follow Malcolm X. I believe we should have burned the country to the ground and started over. We would have got farther than that. They feared him more than they feared. They feared Malcolm X more than they feared MLK. MLK wanted unity. He wanted us to intermingle into the system. Malcolm X said, no, we don't want to intermingle. We want to own. And I collectively believe that, because why would I want to be a part of your system when your system is broken, don't work, and continue to show that it don't work? Because it's prime example, like you said, they built an I-95 through a prominent black community. How many prominent black communities do we have to get destroyed? How many people do we? But that's another point. We actually need leaders. Who's actually going to step up and say, hey, I'm going to be in charge? Because the one thing I know, we always got we got too many chiefs and not enough Indians. We need a couple of chiefs and only one in a whole plethora of Indians. Because if we don't change that, then what's going to change? Nothing.
Well, you know, and the thing is this: I'm going to be having a series of meetings with different groups that I'm associated with over the next 6 months, and we have the answers to what we need to do. We know what the problem is. I don't like keep talking about the problem. I like to work on solutions. I'm just that type of person. We can talk about the problem all day long, and all we're doing is talking. I'm the type that wants to let's get it done. I don't like to meet just because we can meet. I like to meet and make sure that there's something productive being brought from that meeting. So in saying that, I've been having talks with a bunch of people, and we're having the same discussion that we're having right now. Why can't we build together? First, you know, they infiltrated our community, and they brainwashed a whole bunch of us. It took a lot of time for them to make us hate each other. We're the only race on the whole planet that does not work together. There is no other race that don't work together except the black race. We're the only people on this planet that don't work together. Everybody else, they understand the bond, and they understand that it ain't just about racism. It's about understanding who you are and making sure that you continue to exist. Because at some point they can wipe you off the face of the earth if they do it right. You know, our DNA is just so strong that as much as they've tried to destroy us, we're still here. But there's no reason why we can't form groups to build our communities back up. You know, Bernetta Lanier, Councilwoman Bernetta Lanier had a great idea, but it was with what she was doing with what's the name of the project?
Ivory Bay.
Ivory Bay. Yeah. Ivory Bay is a great idea.
Yeah,
great idea to connect all the black communities in Savannah. And the thing was, and I gave, and I had several talks with her about how we can put monies together and start buying these dilapidated houses, renovating them, and putting them back up for sale, buying 3 or 4 more, renovating them. We can rebuild our own community. We just don't want to do it. We just don't trust each other. We don't want to put any monies together to trust somebody to oversee it, because they got it in our head that somebody's going to steal the money all the time. You know, that happens.
Well,
but if you got people where you got checks and balances, where somebody's watching, the three of us are the treasures. You watching Robert, Robert watching you, I'm watching both of y'all, and both of y'all watching me. Ain't gonna be no stealing if we know that. And then somebody ain't got to worry about nobody going to jail if the checks and balances are in place. But we need to be able to put monies together to buy these properties, to renovate them, and to either sell them or lease them out. We have those abilities. We have the finances to do that. We just don't do it. And like I said, I'll be having a series of talks with a bunch of different groups that I'm involved with to try to get them to understand our powers and our numbers, and our with our numbers, we can put the monies together to do certain things to build generational wealth in our own community. We just don't do it. We're lazy.
Well, and if I may, I will go back to something you mentioned. It's two things to what you just said. I think one of the things my dad talked a lot about in on the Watch Dogs a few years ago was about how segregation was one of the worst evils that happened to America and to black folk. And he was exactly right. It basically continued to cripple and to destroy the black community to a point where it has decreased our self-worth and belief in ourselves, right? So now you get to the place of today, like you just said. I don't necessarily believe we've got to watch one another. That's what contracts and legal systems are for, to put those frameworks in place. My problem is, and what I don't like, is when you got backdoor Negroes that will accept money and brown bags from folk that don't look like them and feel like they have made it. And now this individual goes and buy all these properties because they know the policies and the things that they're passing. And then they just shut out their community because I've made it, right? Or they get their families involved with projects like, the one we talked about when I ran for office, the fairgrounds, and people they know, and you shut out the black community. Stop me. It's the selfishness. It's the fact that I can eat well, but I'm not going to worry about my people, right? My biggest, and I tell people this a lot, y'all have heard me say this. If I'm eating, what do I look like over here eating and doing well and making all this profit while brothers and sisters over here suffering, right? So it's about collective community. You can't do but so much with make sure everybody is a part of that pie. It goes back to what they did in Atlanta with Maynard and Andrew. When Maynard and Andrew had a vision to develop Atlanta, they made sure that they created black millionaires. And so now in Atlanta, you go to Atlanta, we don't have to go to nobody for nothing. We go to us for us. And that's the kind of mentality we got to have.
Yeah.
I mean, but you said something, Robert, one of my favorite questions. It's the one question that I always like to ask people to see how their mind thinks. And everybody's going to give a different answer based off what they actually know. I always ask the question is, do you feel like we as the people, African Americans, would have been farther if we had never integrated? Because before integration, we was pumping out some of the greatest inventions of our time, patenting it to this day. We can't be untouched for the stuff that we did. Because baby, I'm thoroughly glad for indoor plumbing and air conditioning and an elevator. Because I know some of y'all really don't like to walk up them stairs. But that's always the question that I like to pose. Because I'll tell everybody, I feel like, no, we shouldn't have integrated. We would have been a lot farther. We would have been a separate society because we did less. We did more with less.
Well, I think, oh God, I'm 50-50 on that one. One, because my work in DEI. I'm a diversity, equity, inclusion person, so it's hard for me to say one way or the other. The problem becomes this. This is what I will say. We, as people of color, operate in systems that were never created for us. We are operating in an America that was created by white Anglo-Saxon Protestant men. It was not created for us. From the days of when they killed Indians and took their land, it was not created for us. So for any person of color and indigenous persons, the system we live in, the laws we live in, the court system we live in, the criminal justice system we live in, it was not created for us. So how can you expect a person of color to be successful or to be treated fairly in a system that wasn't created for us? Even the school systems, they're not created for us. For God's sakes, they don't even teach our history. And then when we want to teach our history, you're going to tell us to whitewash it and change it so it fits your model. So the framework that we operate in it was never created for us. So how can we succeed or even have a chance when the laws were never for us in the first place?
Well, and I understand your question, Carlton. But at some point, there had to be a point where we integrated. We couldn't stay separated. No country, what country is there that's prosperous, that is truly separated, that is prosperous right now? Name one. I can't name any. If you got different people, ethnicities in those countries, and they aren't together, which countries do you know that are separate but equal? And we wanted to be equal but separate, but you had to at some point be integrated. Okay, so I say that to say that our problem wasn't that we all got integrated. Our problem is that when they integrated us, it was still those amongst us that were working with them to hold us back. And if we had integrated, then what would have stopped them from wiping us out completely with some type of smallpox, some type of COVID, some type of disease where we're saying, okay, we're in that half of the country, and they want that part of the country now, and then that's what they do to us. No, I think that integration, yeah, we could have stayed. We were stronger back then because we were bonded back then. We had a bond back then. You know, the church was the most powerful thing that we had, but now the church is the weakest thing that we have. The church is no longer worried about the people. The church is only worried about finances. So, yeah, I think that we had to integrate at some point, but the thing is that we've been institutionalized and brainwashed to the point and programmed to the point where we don't like each other, that we don't work with each other, that we don't care about each other, and that we don't trust each other. And so we got to get rid of that stigmatism and understand how we can be more powerful together. Our power is in our numbers. You know, love conquers everything. We got to start loving each other.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So, y'all ready for commercial break?
Yeah.
All right. We'll be back. All right.
What else do we have?
What you got, Mr. Carter? Oh, let me, if I could, this is what I want to say. I'm sorry, Carlton. But going back to the mass graves, one of the things I would love to bring on this show is Pat Gunn and Amir Toure and a wonderful woman at Clemson University, Dr. Rhonda Thomas. She actually has created research around unmarked graves that started with looking at how Black convicted laborers and slaves were used to build Clemson University, which is the case for many higher education institutions across the South. And so what has happened as a part of our research, she's created this book that is named Call My Name. And now what we have realized, or she has realized in her research, is that we have unmarked graves on campus. So we go back to John C. Calhoun. John C. Calhoun has a big part of Clemson history, which led to him giving the land to his family, which is what we have now as Clemson University. So Clemson, that stadium, and there's a graveyard on campus where there are black unmarked graves of African American convicted laborers and slaves, where there are roads that are built over those graves. And so you look at John C. Calhoun Square, and you have the same thing. But what gets to me is we have more unmarked graves across the South that we have to discover. But then I start to question people who are looking, black folk in leadership, who say nothing and do nothing and care nothing about those types of things. But then we have leadership that wants to leave a John C. Calhoun's name on the square just so we can remember what he did. Help me understand, how do we hold our leadership accountable for one, saying, one, why do you think that is important? But two, why do you feel comfortable being a person of black skin who is afraid to challenge things like that?
You got that for calling them me?
Whoever. That's just open discussion.
Repeat the last part of the question.
So how do we hold people? Basically, how do we hold leaders accountable, black leaders who are in positions of authority that can help us to navigate? How do we preserve that history, honor that history, hold them accountable for do that when they don't want to do it?
Well,
I mean, prime example would be to put them out of office, but the problem is they have created this facade for people to see that they do this, they do that, they do this, and they do that, and they actually don't. We learned this from this past election, from the bad wig wears to the adulterers that's up there. But I digress on that part.
Well, I think a prime example. One of the things that you have to do is, people, when you're suffering, you pay more attention than when you're not suffering. A prime example is Savannah, Georgia, in the last election. You had a chance for people to say, let's do something for us. Instead of, we had people that we thought were going to do things for us, we put in office 4 years ago. We thought that they were, and we tried to replace them this time, and we couldn't, because the people aren't suffering enough to care about the people that are suffering. So until that foot gets put on everybody's neck in our community, so that they can feel it also, and they can see that things should have been done when you had a chance to do it, and now you're going to wait till it changes over and you're not in leadership anymore, and you're going to beg the man for it when you could have done it yourself, but you was doing the bidding of the man at that time. You see? So, and this council is a prime example of it. They think that it's a mandate by them being reelected, that this was a mandate for them to continue doing what they're doing. And in some ways it is, because the people didn't go out to vote. The people didn't care enough to go out and vote. They didn't feel like they were suffering enough to care, to listen, to pay attention, to get engaged and involved. So until you suffer, where you have to pay attention, where you have to go vote, where you have to be engaged, then it's all we can do is what we keep doing here. We got to keep doing what we do. We can't worry about, and Carl, this is a good question, how can we change them? We have to be able to say, we got to keep just striking the stone. We got, if it's just one person who's mad, we change at a time, to understand, of one person that we wake up at a time. We got to keep doing that, because who else is doing it?
Yeah.
Who else is doing it? There ain't nobody else doing what we're doing. We got 20-something shows here where we're trying to bring information and to all that we do. We got 20-something shows 7 days a week on this platform where we're trying to do something positive and informational for our community, something relevant, something important and material that they can say we care enough to bring this information. So it just takes everybody to get off their asses and do things, because it's about everybody being involved. We can't do it by ourselves. But we can't give up either. We can't quit. Right. I know a lot of times people want to quit, but you can't quit because you just got to keep striking that stone. Mm-hmm. One day it's going to break. Somebody's going to listen. Change is going to come. Might not be in our lifetime. You know, Martin Luther King didn't see change, but we're seeing the change from his sacrifices. Him, Malcolm X, then Martin. We're Nat Turner, Sojourner. Not Sojourner. Harriet Tubman. Mm-hmm. We are seeing the fruits of their sacrifice. So somebody will see the fruits of our sacrifice later on. No, we don't have a whole nation behind us yet, but we're the only ones in this area doing it. There's other people in other areas doing it. And collectively, we'll be able to change some minds and some people's involvement and participation later on. We just got to keep doing what we're doing.
But if I could add this really quick, it's so ironic, y'all, that this blows my mind that I thought about while you were talking about that. You got so many of these backdoor, sellout, wannabe seen Negroes that will sit here and disregard the collective work of the community, all in favor of making sure that them or they or their collective little group wins, but yet will turn around and want to celebrate the work of Dr. King. How ironic and stupid is that? How can you sit here?
That's a good point, Rob.
Be on the MLK committee and want to help with the parade and want to be seen and be a big part of it when you don't even espouse the ideas that King worked for. See, Dr. King worked for the community. Dr. King was a martyr for voting rights. So you got folk that won't even vote. You got folk that won't even care about the next person. You got folk who don't even care about poverty, but will sit here and get on that TV and be in that parade Monday and be on stage, all for the sake of being seen. And that wasn't even Dr. King's mojo, right? So then then you beg the question, why are you doing this, right? Because what you're doing is you're slapping him and Coretta in the face. So what I beg of people, if you got the audacity to want to help or do anything on Dr. King's thing, they act and espouse of his values. I want to go back to that city council meeting that Per Richa, he put on his show Friday night, where they made a mockery of Dr. King in Savannah City Council chambers, where it was about pomp and circumstance. Well, if you know anything about Dr. King, and especially here in Savannah, Dr. King wasn't even welcome here when he was doing his work. So that's foolishness in itself. But what I'm saying is this: stop bastardizing the work of King. Stand on the real principles of what he was about, and quit being afraid to lead for the people instead of yourself.
I mean, Judith brought up a good point earlier. Back then, when I mentioned about the separate but equal thing earlier, he said that they realized that there was a problem. That's why they stuck together. So to the point now, I don't feel like people really feel like there is a problem, because I've come to the realization that a lot of people are just complacent where they are, and they have no desire to affect the change that is needed to be changed. They like they like where they're at. They don't have no problem with it. They feel like as long as they can do the little bit of stuff that they do and it's not hindered by that, they don't care. And as far as voting, a lot of people who want to vote can't vote, and the ones who have the authority to vote just choose not to vote because they okay with the status quo, because they are complacent. They don't feel like nothing needs to change. They're not in danger. They don't realize the danger because they can't see the danger, and by the time that they see the danger is already here, and there's nothing that they can do about
it. And to your point, I always use this as an example. I want to know how many people feel good about your Georgia Power bill right now. Since Daniel Blackman and I ran for PSC, you have seen at least, I'm willing to say, a 70% increase on your Georgia power bill. And that's because sorry folk didn't want to vote or you didn't take it seriously. That's the kind of impact that's going to happen. You're going to see more and more of your dollars come out of your pocket, and people that look like you win more and more than you do. All because A, you don't listen, B, you don't vote, or C, you got backdoor folk who look like you that won't support you. So we got to start taking things a little more seriously, being engaged a little more. And I mean, I'm using a lot of direct, harsh words today because it's just that serious. You know, it impacts everything we do. That one vote impacts your dollars, impacts your health care, impacts your way of being, impacts your life. But the fact is, if you don't get out there and vote your opinion, people that are against you always win.
You know, I'm looking at the bottom of the screen since we're talking about change, and I see that it says vote for Richard Coleman. Who is this gentleman? Because I'm pretty sure one of you can elaborate a little bit more on him.
Which one?
Richard Coleman, the sheriff candidate.
Oh, Richard is our new sheriff candidate. Here's his a thing right here.
Okay.
This is thing there.
Mm-hmm. What's his background? I understand Richard has been in law enforcement spaces before, but I think, Julius, you probably know him a little bit more than I do.
Yeah, he's been the chief in Thunderbolt, been the chief at 2 other cities, I believe, in Georgia. Been the assistant chief at 1 or 2 places. He has a long history in law enforcement, and so he's going to try his hand here at becoming the new sheriff. The only position in the whole Chatham County that we have not had a African American representative in is the sheriff's position. We've had it, and it used to be the sheriff and the coroner, but we elected the sheriff, the coroner, and the tax commissioner. Now we got the tax commissioner and the coroner out of the way, and the tax commissioner and the coroner out of the way. Now the only position left is the sheriff position that African American has not ever held that position in Chatham County. So we're going to see how it goes. Everybody is a friend of the current sheriff. Everybody loves Johnny. Johnny's a great guy. Richard just feels like it's time for a change, and that he can fill that position and be an advocate for the people and restore justice to our communities and safety to our communities. He want to address all the crime issues. He want to improve the jail conditions and be a voice for all the people. He has some great ideas. I sit down and I talk with him, and the current sheriff is a Republican. I'm a Democrat. Ricky's a Democrat. So, we can't cross party lines when you do that, even though you might be a friend of that other person. But it's going to be an interesting race, and we're going to go forward and do what we can to see whether we can get this position.
Well, and I agree with you on that. And the CCDC is going to hate what I'm about to say, but I don't care. The things that I heard you say, and I want all the, even district attorney. Now I am endorsing Shalina Cook Jones. I am Robert Bryan endorsing Shalina and Richard. However, the questions that all the candidates need to answer, from DA to sheriff, are: what's your ideas on jail reform? And 2, what's your ideas on criminal justice reform? And 3, what are your ideas on changing the criminal justice system? We need to stop putting folks in jail for nonviolent crimes. And whoever stands on a policy that's close to that will get my vote, regardless of endorsements. You heard I endorse who I endorse. But I want to know, what are we going to do to reduce incarceration, which is a taxpayer issue? And 2, how are we going to improve jail conditions? Because just because a person was incarcerated does not mean we get to treat them like animals.
It's funny that you mentioned Cook, because I like her. I never met her. Thoroughly impressed by what she's done since she's been in office. I I met other people who work up, a couple of the 88s who work up under there, and they've spoken very, very highly of her. But then when I go into the community and I hear, like, when I was talking to somebody about it, and she mentioned, she brought her up by name, she was thoroughly upset with her about the fact of the matter of, I think her son got shot, and how Cook handled the case about the defendant who shot her son. She absolutely was mad about it because the young man got out. But the one thing that I have to remind people is, I understand that you are upset, but we also have to take the fact of the facts of the case into account. What actually happened? What were they doing? Because a lot of times, just because you feel some type of way about what you feel like the outcome of what happened was not favorable to what you wanted to happen, that don't mean that what happened wasn't right. But sometimes what's right may look wrong, but it was absolutely correct in the first place.
And to your point, what burns my gears in this city of Savannah is we will make judgment calls on stuff without sitting down and getting the facts. You cannot just go off what you hear or what you think you know, and then that becomes true. Because just like you said, go sit down with the woman and have a conversation, because you don't know what you're talking about 90% of the time. But because Johnny May said it, or because Pookie rural uncle said it, now that becomes truth. But you don't have no real facts. You have no real facts. That blows my mind in this community. It goes back to the whole thing of, when we vote, we will listen to anybody but the horse's mouth. Like, come on, people. So what now you have done, you now will go back to a candidate like a Meg Heap, who has no interest in your community, has every interest of hurting your people, but yet you will go to elect that person because you mad at Shalina. How stupid can that be? We got to stop that, folks.
Well, and then what we have in this city, Carlton, and we talked about it earlier, you brought it up, about how do we get everybody to work together. What you have is, if you watch in this upcoming county elections, you're going to see these Democrats going against Democrats for Republicans. Yeah. You're going to see this mayor step outside of and they're going to allow this to happen. That's what I don't like. You're going to see this mayor step outside and endorse people that he shouldn't be endorsing. He should just be quiet if he's not going to endorse the Democrat. He should just be quiet. But he's going to give support to people that don't have our best interests at hand. And they're allowing this. And some people, I don't know how in the hell he was able to, it was a whole campaign done for 4 years for him to get back in office because he's doing their bidding. They didn't like him, and now they love him. What happened? If somebody don't like you, and they showing this disdain for you, and then all of a sudden they like you, and they're supporting you now, what happened to make that change? You turned over a new leaf. You started working for them to like you. And people, and once he figured that he had everybody else on his side, he had everybody else hoodwinked, he started creating these ad hoc campaign committees, started putting people on these irrelevant boards and everything. These are campaign committees that he was creating, and people didn't see it. I saw it, started pointing it out, and this is how he was able to overcome our fight against him. But he's a rock star here. He's a rock star here. I don't know whether he'll be anywhere else, but he's a rock star here. So you get people like that, and you put them in place, and they don't work with you to make sure that the people that you want in office are there. They continue to get either paid under the table or get great favors or whatever they're getting, but it's not to the benefit of our community. And we see it as plain as day. But you get those suckers and those groupies and those followers who are going to follow this man and support him, even though he's got a foot on their family's neck. He might not have a foot on their neck, but he got one on Aunt Betsy's neck, or Uncle Roy's neck, you know, and your grandmama, and your great grandmama, you know, their houses ain't being rebuilt out in West Savannah. Ain't nothing, no economic development coming in West Savannah Farm, but everybody else is getting everything built around them, sidewalks and everything. We don't even have all that in the Black communities. So you got Black people in power, and then you got Black people who need the help aren't getting the help from the Black people who are in power, and the Black people who are related to all these people that need help are supporting the people who are holding them back. You know, and it just don't make sense. We're our own worst enemy. We're the only people on this planet that hate each other. And people say, why you talk bad about another Black man? I'm gonna talk bad about any damn body that ain't doing what they're supposed to do in our community to uplift it. When you have an opportunity, the chance, and the power to do
it. And I know we got to close out in a minute, Carlton, but this is what I call the Arthur Blank theory. We find we allow wealthy white males to come into our spaces to offer us a bag of money, coins, and then we think we have arrived, and then we turn around and we look, and our communities are gone. Vine City, right? Southwest Atlanta, right? But then we are okay with relocating to other areas while they now thrive in our communities. So I beg of you all, and when I find the clip, I'm going to post it. I'll bring it next week, of the Jacksonville, Floridas, of Charleston's, of different communities. You know, I am a huge advocate for maintaining and preserving and keeping the character of Black communities. Because as I keep telling people, if you go to any city across this nation, segregation made sure that your people were over there. But now that over there became prime property, we want to put you over there and down out the way. Why can't we be a part of the dream? Why can't we be engaged with the process? Because if our property is so valuable, then why you want to come by and leave us out of the conversation? I just don't see that as right. And for the ignorant Negroes that buy into that, you are some sad, need to have a life, less self-esteem person.
Well, you got to realize when you say like the property, grandma and granddaddy was proud to have their property. They took care of their property. But then what happened to grandma and granddaddy? They got older, they got sicker. And then once they transitioned on to the other side, family came in and they started living in it, running it down. They didn't want to do nothing with it. So then what happens is, guess what? The city has these codes. They come in, they be like, oh, you're not taking care of the property. The grass not cut. They condemn it.
But to your point, Carlton, we were never given, like I said earlier, we are operating in a system that's not for us. So we were never given an opportunity to be able to develop that wealth. We were not given access to the laws or understanding of the laws to be a part of the process. So it was always designed for us to be left out. So you can't expect a person to participate in a game when they don't know the rules. That's not fair. And so people, why don't you go learn them? That's not how people were conditioned. See, we got to stop. What we got to start doing, Black folk, is finding ways. And you're not doing this. I'm just saying it's across the board, because we'll find Black folks say, well, you should have went and found it. How can you find something you never knew existed in the first place? That's why you don't see a lot of us in investments, because we weren't allowed to even know that existed. Come on, folks. We weren't even allowed to go to school until what year? So what I'm saying is, we were never given access. Black folk were never given access to participate in this system. So now, all of a sudden, like you say, we're going to lose the property because we didn't know how to keep it in the first place. Give you a great example of that. I'm going through it right now. If I had not had the wherewithal, and this is because I live in privilege, right? My mom and dad did so much for us. They were beautiful parents, to the point where I've earned a doctorate degree. So I operate from a different lens. But had I not taken the time to understand what was going on with a conservator, I could have lost everything. But because I had my foot on her neck, is the fact that I'm not going to lose a step, because they know good and well, if y'all try me like that, it's going to be some smoke in the city. So what I'm saying is, we've got to make sure that we start having education and sharing information like on these platforms, because if not, we lose out even more.
I mean, but we can't just have education on platforms like this, but we have to go out and reach. We have to find ways to reach out to the people themselves. Because that's my one thing that I advocate about youth is because I know I grew up privileged, and then I got the opportunity to go and pursue my degrees as well, and my degrees and certifications as well. But the one thing that I know is a lot of these kids come into these situations where they actually don't know it, and I don't want them to be. I don't want them to not know. I want them to have that same foot on the neck like certain palm colored people have.
Yeah.
I always advocate it because, like I tell everybody, like he said earlier, about the fact that these politicians get to places where people don't like them. For one point, they don't like them, and then they start liking them. That's because they've changed their narrative. Like I tell anybody, I don't never care about being the villain in your story if it makes sense to progress my people farther than what they've been.
All right, well, sir, it's up to y'all. Are we closing out or? What's your final comments? But I'm following y'all lead.
Well, I mean, it's up to y'all. It's up.
Call what you're thinking. We can always have part 2 next week.
I mean, I'm always down for coming back to do something else, add some more knowledge to it.
All right. Well, what's your final comments, thoughts, or
feelings? I gave my final thought.
Okay, I did too. So I guess it's on you, Julius, to close it out.
Well, my final thought is to find somebody that you can work with. Find somebody that you can work with. That's the only way that we're going to change anything in our community is to find somebody that you can work with. You got to build coalitions. You can't do it by yourself. There's nothing that I could do by myself. I couldn't do what we're doing on this platform with all the things that we built by myself. I needed all of you. It's 20 or 30 of us that gets things done on this platform. So, and I say that to say, you have to be able to work with each other. We all have to be able to trust each other. We all have to be able to stop making excuses about being involved and getting engaged. We have to be participants in the change. We can't go and think that we're going to pray change in. Change is only going to come when we make people see our power. And our power is in our numbers and our unity. We can't do it by ourselves. So if you don't want change, then just stay on the sideline and complain. If you think your life is all right and grandma's life is all right and your grandkids going to be all right because you all right now, then just continue to do what you're doing. It's an old saying that I'm going to repeat it before I go. And y'all just got to think about it and remember it. Strong men create good times. Y'all are the strong men right now. This is good times. Those people who think everything is okay. They're not worried about nothing and worried about everybody else. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. Hard times create strong men. It's a cycle, and we go through this cycle. And I've been telling you over and over, Robert, when you do that, drag the person who talking
I'm
sorry.
But you see how I get it treated to Ray?
Yeah, but you have to be able to understand this cycle and understand what I just said. We keep going through this cycle, but other people don't. We keep going through this cycle, and we got to be able to break that cycle.
That's true.
It. All right, y'all. Guess next week, same time, same place, part 2.
Yes, sir.
All right, y'all. See you next Saturday.
like that. Like that.